The end of 2024 brought a terrible tragedy to South Korea. On December 29, Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 crashed while trying to land at Muan International Airport. The Boeing 737-800 was flying from Bangkok, Thailand, with 181 people on board. The accident shocked the world, making the holidays a sad time for many. It reminds us that life is precious and that flying can be dangerous. The flight left Suvarnabhumi Airport earlier that day and was supposed to arrive at Muan late that night. As the plane prepared to land, the accident happened, changing the lives of everyone on board and their families forever. South Korea is in mourning, and a full investigation is underway to find out what happened. While investigators work hard to understand the events that led to the crash, the world waits for answers. The crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 shows us that even with modern technology, accidents can still happen, leaving sadness and unanswered questions. The crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 caused a terrible loss of life. Of the 181 people on board, 177 died, including passengers and crew. The victims came from all walks of life, each with their own stories, dreams, and loved ones. They will be deeply missed. Among the passengers were 79 men and 77 women. We still don't know who 22 of the victims are, which shows how bad the crash was. 2 people from Thailand were also on the plane, showing how this tragedy affected people from different countries. Losing so many lives at once reminds us how important it is to appreciate every moment. The families and friends of the victims are dealing with a terrible loss. The pain of this accident will always be with them. People from all over the world are offering their support, showing that we are all connected in times of sadness. Officials are still working to identify all the victims so their families can have closure. The impact of this tragedy is huge, and it will be felt for many years to come. The last moments of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 were terrifying. Early reports say the plane hit some birds while it was getting ready to land. Bird strikes happen sometimes, but they can be dangerous, especially when a plane is taking off or landing. As the pilots tried to deal with this, they were told to switch from runway 01 to runway 19. This change might have been part of what caused the crash. Things got worse quickly, and the pilots sent a mayday call, which means there was a serious emergency. The pilots tried their best to control the plane, but it was losing altitude. The plane hit something near the runway, causing more damage. The landing gear broke, which meant the plane couldn't land safely. The investigation into the crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 is still going on. Investigators are looking at everything that happened on the flight. They are focusing on the bird strike, the broken landing gear, and whether the pilots made any mistakes. Bird strikes can be very dangerous, especially during takeoff or landing. Investigators are looking at radar information and pieces of the plane to see how bad the bird strike was, and if it caused the crash. The landing gear broke after the bird strike, and that's another important part of the investigation. Experts are looking at maintenance records, flight data, and the wreckage to see if the bird strike caused the landing gear to break or if something else was wrong. It's less likely that the pilots made a mistake, but investigators are still looking at their training, experience, and what they did before the crash to see if they played a role in the accident. The black boxes from the plane are very important for the investigation. These boxes record flight data and what happened in the cockpit. Both the flight data recorder, FDR, and the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, were found in the wreckage. They give investigators important information about the final moments of the flight. The FDR records lots of technical details like how high the plane was flying, how fast it was going, and how the engines were working. This information helps investigators recreate what happened and see if anything went wrong with the plane. The CVR records conversations and other sounds in the cockpit. This tells investigators what the pilots were doing and saying before the crash. They will listen carefully to hear if there were any problems. The information from the black boxes, along with other evidence, will help investigators figure out what caused the crash and how to prevent similar accidents in the future. Right after the crash, South Korean authorities quickly responded. More than 1,570 people, including firefighters, paramedics, and rescue workers, went to the crash site to put out the fire, look for survivors, and help anyone who was hurt. Muan International Airport was closed to all air traffic right after the crash. It stayed closed until January 1, 2025, so authorities could focus on rescue efforts, investigate the crash site, and make sure the airport was safe to use again. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol sent his condolences to the families of the victims and promised a thorough investigation. He also told rescue workers to stay safe while doing their jobs. The quick response from authorities shows how prepared South Korea is for emergencies and how much they care about the people affected. The crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 has brought sadness and support from all over the world. Jeju Air CEO Kim Il-bae said he was very sorry for what happened and took responsibility for the tragedy. He promised to help with the investigation and do everything he can to prevent this from happening again. Boeing, the company that made the 737-800, also said they were sorry and offered to help with the investigation. They are working closely with investigators to provide technical information. World leaders including US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping offered their condolences and support to South Korea. People all over the world are sad about this tragedy and are supporting those who are hurting. This shows that even when we are from different countries, we care about each other during difficult times. The crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 is a very sad day for aviation. It is the worst airline accident of 2024 and reminds us that flying can be dangerous. This tragedy shows that the aviation industry needs to keep improving safety, pilot training, and how airplanes are maintained. This is South Korea's worst aviation disaster since 1997, when Korean Air Flight 801 crashed in Guam, killing 228 people. The Jeju Air crash reminds us of that tragedy and shows how important it is to always focus on passenger safety. The investigation into the Jeju Air crash will take a long time and be very complicated. Investigators want to find out exactly what happened. What they learn will likely change rules, training, and even how airplanes are designed. Hopefully, what we learn from this accident will prevent similar tragedies in the future, honoring the memories of those we lost by making flying safer for everyone. The crash of Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 will never be forgotten. People who saw it happen and those who followed the news will always remember it. Pictures of the burning plane, the rescue workers, and the grieving families remind us how easily life can be lost and how unpredictable things can be. News reporters from all over the world told the story of the crash, the rescue efforts, and the victims. This tragedy was big news everywhere, showing how important it is for reporters to tell the public what is happening. Even after the news stories stop, we will remember the images and stories from this crash. They will remind us how much these tragedies affect people and how important it is to cherish every moment with our loved ones. We will always remember the people who died in the Jeju Air Flight 7C-2216 crash. Their stories, their dreams, and the love they shared will inspire us to live our lives to the fullest and work towards a world where these kinds of tragedies don't happen.